The House Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Committee will come to order. Would the clerk please take attendance?
Chair Shannon.
Present.
Representatives McDonald,
Present.
Coleman, Conlon,
Present.
Farhat,
Present.
Fitzgerald,
Here.
Hoskins,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Outman,
Here.
Roth,
Here.
Bruck, Kuntz,
Here.
St. Germain.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 11 members present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I need a motion to adopt minutes from the last meeting, March 21st. Representative Roth makes that motion. Seeing no opposition, the minutes are adopted. Today we'll be taking up House Bills 4250, 4251, and 4252 for testimony. I would like to invite up Representative Kolazar and Representative Mueller. I saw earlier, don't know if he's joining you. Okay. Well, Representative Kolazar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Vice Chairs and Committee, for taking testimony on House Bills 4250, 4251, and 4252. My colleagues, Representatives Tyrone Carter and Mike Mueller, are in committee right across the hall in reg reform right now, so I get to perform triple duty here. So I will do my best to answer any questions on those bills as well. I also want to just give a thank you to a lot of the families who have been affected by tragic events with distracted driving that are here, and I want to thank former Representative Mari Manoogian, who's here with us as well, who did a lot of work on this in previous sessions. So if we pass these bills into law, Michigan would become the 26th hands-free state in the country. What we have found is that existing law in Michigan says that there is no texting and driving. That exists today. Unfortunately, the law has not kept up with the technology of the times. So right now, while Michigan law says no texting and driving, cell phone use while driving is not currently banned unless you are a driver that is on a level 1 or level 2 graduated status or on a permit. So what my bill does is it updates us with the times, says no using a mobile electronic device while driving. So that makes sure that you're not on social media, you're not using a streaming service like Zoom or anything like that. The exception is with voice-operated hands-free mode. So if you think of something like Apple CarPlay or something like that, you can still use that. You simply just cannot be on your cell phone while you are driving. Again, we would be the 26th state that would do this. We do know from the states that do keep this data that are hands-free that distracted driving deaths account for about 3,000 deaths per year in this country, and those are only out of the states that we know of. It's definitely higher than that. They're just states that don't keep those records. So this legislation is designed at saving lives, which is incredibly important. The other two bills that are associated with House Bill 4250, which is what I have been talking about, one has to do with the penalties assessed and the points attached to it, and the other one has to do with a study that will be a 42-month study that makes sure that we are not disproportionately affecting certain communities and make sure that we are getting those results that we are indeed aiming to achieve to save lives. And I just want to be forward that there will be a substitute forthcoming so all members know that will remove the 180-day waiting period because we find that the most tragic events happen during the summer. So if we have a 180-day waiting period, you're basically having a period that this would not be in effect for the deadliest months. In addition, it also will add in a 5-year sunset that correlates with that 42-month study to make sure that we are doing exactly what the bill is aiming to do. And with that, I will do my best to answer any questions, but we do have a lot of families that want to testify, so I want to make sure I'm yielding more time to them. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll take a few questions. Vice Chair Outman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Kolesar, for bringing this legislation forward. Just a couple of questions for you. One, what is the increase in penalties, and do we have points now?
So there are points now for texting and driving. The penalties, really what they are, and I wish Rep. Mueller was able to be here because he knows an awful lot about this topic from when he worked on it in previous terms, but it makes sure that our younger drivers, the penalty is matching what could happen to an older driver, is the way he was telling me this morning.
Gotcha. My other question has to do with GPS. So if you don't have hands-free capability, what are drivers supposed to do in terms of GPS and navigating?
That's a good question because I think we all use it, right?
Yeah.
So car mounts. car mounts are still going to be acceptable as well. And you can find there's a lot of organizations that donate car mounts free of charge. I know AT&T, when you get a smartphone, they'll give you a car mount. So there's a lot of access to that, and I think it's important just to make sure that that access is easy enough for residents to have. But the easiest thing is if you've got the car mount right there. It's
Gotcha. How is that any safer though? I don't understand that.
I think if your phone is here and the windshield's here, it's a lot better than doing this.
I suppose, but I tell you, I mean, I've got a screen on my car. It's a relatively newer car. I feel like that's just as distracting as looking at your phone. That's just my personal experience, but that was just a question I have for some of the old guys like my dad that don't have a newer car and still rely on GPS and things like that. So
No, and I think it's absolutely a justified concern. I think it's important to also know that as time goes on, cars that don't have those technologies are going to slowly go, unless you drive a truly classic car that you're maintaining.
right, I get that, but it's just like I see GM is supporting this, and they probably love everybody to go out and buy a new car. That's just not feasible for a lot of folks, especially in my district where the average income is like $35,000. Pretty low threshold there. So just a couple of concerns I have, but I appreciate your time and thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you.
Representative Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative. Michigan's the 26th. I support the bill. Michigan's going to be the 26th state. Can we quantify the safety differences? How much safer are the states that have this than the states that don't?
That is data I would be happy to get to you. I don't have it with me offhand, but to my knowledge, the data they have aggregated has proven that it is safer. A lot of the problem with distracted driving is it's tough to prove when it happens, and that is an issue. I think, unfortunately, a lot of the evidence we have is anecdotal, but I can see what data we can get to and be happy to supply that to your office.
Thank you. And this is my preemptive, why did you do this? And I'd like to be able to tell my constituents. So you see, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Conlon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Rep. Kolzar. I just had a question about communications around this. Do we have a good way to get a PSA out if we do this immediately to make sure everybody knows that this law has changed and what it means, since most everybody is guilty of this right now?
Absolutely. I mean, I would say that there has been a lot of attention paid to this topic for a number of years now. As I said earlier, this is not the first term this has been introduced. I think a lot of attention's been, I did 2 media interviews over the weekend. I think that there's going to be a lot of ways to get this information out there, and it's important for drivers to know their rights on the road and know what is an offense and what is not. I mean, I think if you talk to a lot of people, they didn't realize that, it really only covers texting and driving. A lot of people think, no, you're on your phone. You shouldn't be on your phone. But I think just updating the statute is important. Our technology has passed the law by.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, Representative. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So we do have some people who would like to testify. So continuing with testimony on the distracted driving package is Steve Kiefer. Steve is chairman at the Kiefer Foundation. Thank you so much for coming in to testify. And families, please feel free to introduce your family.
There we go. Thank you, Chairman Shannon. Thank you so much for bringing this forward. It's so important to so many of us. My name's Steve Kiefer, and I'm here on behalf of my son, Mitchell, who was killed by a distracted driver nearly 7 years ago in September of 2016. I'm joined by Mitchell's mother, Paula, and my daughter, Alexa, Mitchell's little sister. Lexi's a junior at Michigan State University studying to be a teacher, so very proud of her, and thank you both for being here. And also thank you, Representative Kolzar, for being a leader on this, and actually Representative Manoogian for being a leader in the past. I was reflecting a bit. We first brought this up 4 years ago. We started Hands Free Michigan with our Kiefer Foundation with an effort to bring these bills forward and get these done. And here we are 4 years later having the same discussion. And obviously, as most of you know, a little over 1,000 people die every year on the roadways of Michigan. the stats say about 10% of those are distracted driving. I think the reality is it's probably closer to 50%. And if we look back at these past 4 years, how many lives could have been saved if we had this kind of effective, enforceable legislation in place. And I should also acknowledge all of the other victims' families that are here that have been at it in some cases 12, 15 years. So I just think if they could have been successful in the past, maybe we wouldn't be here, and maybe my son Mitchell would be here. Mitchell's story, just briefly. Mitchell was driving up to Michigan State University. It was his first month as a new Spartan back on September 19th of 2016. The weather was perfect. It was a day like today. The weather was perfect. The roads were dry. Mitchell slowed down because traffic slowed down, and a young lady was on her phone and didn't slow down. She rear-ended Mitchell at about 82 miles an hour, and of course the forensic data says that she was at 7% throttle, so she never touched her brakes. So we know she was distracted and drove Mitchell across a very narrow median on I-96 into oncoming traffic where he was killed instantly. So we started the Kiefer Foundation just to try to do something in honor of Mitchell. Mitchell wanted to change the world, and here we are trying to change the world in his memory. We, of course, learned the horrible statistics that 9 to 10 people are killed every day in this country by distracted drivers. And as I said, we know those are underreported, and the number's probably closer to 50. So if you can just pause for a moment and think of the 50 young people that will die today because of distracted driving, it's just absolutely horrific. Hands-free, we've been working around the country with the support of a number of organizations. In the time that we've been working on this, now 10 states have passed hands-free laws, which is bringing it to 25 in total, Ohio being the most recent one in January, as many of you may know. In those states, I can tell you the data would say, because one of the questions was asked earlier, the data would say that crashes and deaths drop anywhere between 10 and 20%. Now, the real key is depending on how active the communication is and how well these things are enforced, that those numbers can stick for many years or they can sort of dip afterwards. So it's really important to get these bills passed, get the law in place. We are planning a massive campaign because our goal is to get this done by Memorial Day. And I hope all of you can help us make that happen. Memorial Day is the beginning of what we refer to as the 100 deadliest days of summer. These are the 100 days between Memorial Day and Labor Day where traffic crashes and deaths go up about 15% all over the country due to summer fun, prom, graduation, 4th of July, and so on. So we know that if we can get these bills signed into law by Memorial Day, have a massive campaign, have enforcement, we can save lives this summer, and all of you can certainly be part of it. There were some questions about phone mounts as well, and we have also contributed. Many of you may have received our Just Drive phone mounts. I commit on behalf of our Kiefer Foundation, if there's anyone in the state that needs a hands-free mount for an older phone, we will make sure that they get that because it's just so important. And of course, I'll just say again, we started this campaign called Just Drive. Obviously, we would prefer if people would just put the phone away and completely focus on driving. Our message is when you're behind the wheel, put the phone away and just drive. But we do realize people need to stay connected, and if you do need to stay connected, there's so many tools that can help you. Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, if you have the newer vehicles, even the do not disturb mode on your phone. So much technology because we know that the phone has been the single greatest contributor to distracted driving, but we also think the phone can be part of the solution. So we have a number of items that we're promoting in that sense. There's so many more things we could talk about, but I would just finish by saying thank you all for your support. We've been at this now through 3 sessions. I can't tell you how many times I've testified, how many times I've had to tell Mitchell's story, and we do it because we want to save your children's life. This is not about Mitchell anymore. It's about your children, and we can save lives this summer, and please help us do this before it happens to one of you. Paula, would you like to add any comments?
Steve says it all. I just want to say on the way here, it never gets easy for me to drive down 96 where my son was killed. And we do it quite often because my daughter's up at Michigan State, so it's a drive that we have to endure every few times a year. As we were driving here to Lansing, I drove past Sparrow Hospital, where eventually my son his body was taken for an autopsy. I can't tell you the devastation you feel. it's something that you will never, ever get over. And our family is going to have to live with this for the rest of our lives. For such a senseless, mindless, stupid thing as somebody on their phone driving down the highway at 82 miles per hour, not paying attention to the road, paying more attention to her phone. And so many people are guilty of it, and it needs to stop. It's just common sense.
Lexi?
My brother Mitchell lived 18 wonderful years, and it seems like we're so focused on the last minute of it. Every time we come into a room like this and we tell the story, you guys all remember him as a victim and not really the person he truly was. And I'm just tired of being a victim. I'm tired of remembering my brother as a victim. He was so much more than that. So let's get this done so that you guys don't have to remember your loved ones that way.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your testimony today, and very sorry for your loss. I think we should get this done also. I have a 20-year-old daughter out there in the world up at Central Michigan, and I can't imagine. So thank you so much. I did have one question from Vice Chair Outman.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for being here. You guys did a wonderful job, and I think you might have won me over. I've been opposed to this in the past, but it's man, it's such an issue, and I'm guilty of it as well. I'm addicted to my phone. Sometimes I will text and drive, look at it while I'm driving, and it just needs to stop. I'm with you on that. As I make my commute down here every day, you'll be shocked at how many people I look over next to, and they're just buried in their phone, and it's such a problem. I do have one specific question for you, sir, and maybe you can answer this, but do you have any data on a percentage of teenage drivers that are contributing to these accidents?
We let me say this because we have just a ton of data. One of our partners is a company called Cambridge Mobile Telematics that they work with all the insurance companies that have these safe driving apps. We can get you data sliced and diced any way that any of you need it. They have 25 million people that are driving with this, so the data is available. I would say that the data that I have seen would say that it's disproportionate towards teenagers. I mean, this is obviously the largest killer of young people from 19 to 30.
Inexperienced drivers, and
Exactly.
You had a huge distraction like that. I can just see them being the most significant contributor to some of these. I'm not trying to discriminate against teenagers, but it's they're unexperienced drivers.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So
yeah, if you could give me that data, that'd be fantastic. I consider myself kind of a data nerd, so I would love to kind of peel through that and just kind of dissect it a little.
I'll get you a ton of data, and then when you look at it, if there's more data you want sliced in any different way, we'll get that. It'll all be part of this campaign that really will help make people understand in time for Memorial Day.
Sure.
And let me just say, it was completely worth the drive if we won somebody over that wasn't supportive before, because we've always said if we could talk for 5 or 6 minutes about Mitchell, anyone would be convinced. So I'm glad you're convinced.
Yeah, thank you guys so much, and so sorry
Thank
for
you.
your loss.
Thank you.
Doesn't look like we have any other questions. Thank you so much, Kiefer family, for coming in and sharing Mitchell's story with us.
Thank you so much, Chairman.
Thank you. Next, we have Jim Santilli, the Chief Executive Officer of Transportation Improvement Association. Thank you for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, Vice Chair, and all honorary committee members. Also, thank you to Representative Kolazar, Mueller, and the many others who've worked so hard over the years on this important issue. Again, I'm Jim Santilli. I'm the CEO of the Transportation Improvement Association, an agency that was formed back in 1967 by more than 200 government officials as well as corporate executives. I got 22 years of traffic safety experience, and on the distracted driving side, I started working at the local level on hands-free ordinances back in 2009, and then also at the state level in 2016. I've been hit by 3 distracted drivers, unfortunately, so definitely, we know it's a major issue out there. As you all know, distracted driving is a danger to all people who are traveling on our roadways, and I'm present today to support House Bills 4250, 4251, and 4252. The current issue, as Representative Kolazar mentioned earlier, the texting while driving law, MCL 257602B. The problem is with it, it's specific to texting. So oftentimes what happens, a law enforcement officer sees someone on their phone, they initiate a traffic stop, and the person says, well, I wasn't texting. The officer may still write the citation, but it goes to court. The judge or magistrate will say, can you prove they were texting? No. And it gets thrown out of court. So our law really, I'll be honest, is archaic at this point and needs to be updated. Back on March 30th of 2016, Laurel Zimmerman, who unfortunately she couldn't be here today, she sadly lost her 16-year-old daughter, Allie Zimmerman, back in 2011. Allie was hit by a distracted driver who ran a red light. Her and I announced the Hands Free Michigan campaign. Hands-free legislation was introduced shortly after, and so many other victims, including Jim and Diane Freibler, Steve Kiefer, and many others, have worked tirelessly over the years to make Michigan a hands-free state. Sadly, it's now 2023, and no action was taken during previous legislative sessions. The result, it's tragic. 121,203 crashes involving a distracted driver since March 30th of 2016. 440 people have lost their life, and 46,601 people were injured. And, as I always say, these aren't numbers. These are real people who were taken away from their loved ones, their family members, and their friends. And this could have been prevented. And who knows, had action been taken early in 2016, maybe Steve and his family would not be sitting here today, and maybe Mitchell would still be with us. So it's time we take action. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, also known as NHTSA, which is a branch of the U.S. Department of Transportation, did a naturalistic driving study years ago, and observations recorded by in-vehicle instrumentation show that almost 80% of all crashes involve the driver looking away from the roadway just prior to the event. So again, we know distracted driving is a major issue. On average, when a driver is looking down at their device, they're looking away for about 4.6 of every 6 seconds. So to put that into perspective, if you're traveling at 55 miles per hour, that's the equivalent of driving the length of a football field while blindfolded. I know we talk a lot about education. People are aware this is a dangerous behavior. We've done a ton of public education over the years, many different organizations and agencies, radio PSAs, TV PSAs, billboards, all kinds of things. So people know it's dangerous, but it's time that we update the law and we do some enforcement. And enforcement could really be part of the education process as well. I know, I believe it was Representative Kuntz asked earlier about success in other states. Well, hands-free does work. Back in 2016, I had a lot of interaction with the Commissioner of the California Highway Patrol. California enacted a ban on handheld cell phone use while driving in July of 2008. When they looked at state crash records 2 years before and 2 years after the handheld ban went into effect, overall traffic deaths declined 22%, while handheld cell phone driver deaths went down 47%. So there was much success there. Just to kind of give an idea, we do an enforcement program, Operation Ghost Rider, usually every year. Our last one was in 2021. 39 law enforcement officers, and this was in an 8-hour period, stopped 673 vehicles for distracted driving. And we see all types of things. We've had drivers, actually it was during that one, a driver was using their laptop computer driving on the freeway. We see people with iPads strapped to the steering wheel watching Netflix movies. We had a bus full of kids. The bus driver was driving distracted. So, again, this is a major issue. We need to finally do something about it. It's long overdue, and it's affecting so many people. So, my hope is that you'll vote in favor of House Bill 4250, 4251, and 4252. And again, the goal is for drivers to keep their eyes on the road, hands on the wheel. Thank you.
Doesn't look like we have any questions. I do want to clarify, though, we are just taking testimony today, and we'll be taking it up for a vote in a couple weeks. Next up, we have Jane Horrell with the League of Michigan Bicyclists in support of the legislation. The floor is yours, Jane.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Jane Horrell. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. The reason I'm here. Oh. I don't hear very well. Okay, how's this? Thank you. All right. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. The reason I'm here is my husband of 23 years, Dan, who was 62, was riding his bike in a Michigan State Park in Brighton, Michigan, Island State Recreational Area, as he so often did. On April 24th, 2019, he was hit by a distracted driver. This is Dan. I miss him a great deal. Dan succumbed to his many injuries. Spinal cord was severed, punctured lung, a stroke. He died on April 26th, 2 days later. Our 2 children, his brothers, sisters, and friends were able to say goodbye, which was a blessing, as many others that this has happened to have not been as fortunate. Our lives were instantly changed in a way we could never have imagined. Dan used to ride from our house to the park, but in 2018, after nearly being hit by a distracted driver, he started transporting his bike to the park in the car and only riding in the park. Where is it safe to be a pedestrian or cyclist? Dan was in a state park. We are all pedestrians every day. And when I first got involved in this, I met Bonnie Raphael, and I want to thank her for, fighting for Kelsey's Law, banning texting. However, if hands-free Michigan phone laws, House Bills 4250, 4251, and 4252, if they would have been in effect, I believe Dan would be alive today, and our lives would be on the path that we had planned. Dan had retired from the University of Michigan after 38 years of service, and he was enjoying bicycling, playing hockey, darts, skiing, fly fishing, hunting, and spending time with his family. Dan was pure Michigan. We were planning on retiring to northern Michigan, and these plans were nixed when he was hit by that distracted driver. We so missed Dan at our daughter's graduation from college, which was on Father's Day in 2019. This was a very tough day. Our son is trying to find his way to recover from the devastation of losing his best friend. As a mother of a now 23-year-old, this hurts. I've had the pleasure of meeting many families that have lost loved ones to distracted drivers through the Stop Distractions organization, the Kiefer Foundation, AAA, and the League of Michigan Bicyclists. We should all just drive. These organizations have opened my eyes and be supportive of days like today and the previous days so that we can do the right thing. No one should have to endure death from a distracted driver who is not using their phone hands-free. And until a senseless death of a loved one from a distracted driver happens to you, you have no idea how this affects you and others. Death from a distracted driver is preventable. The distracted driver that killed Dan, his life was forever changed that day as well. And we pray for him, as this should not have happened to him. And I know his life will never be the same. Since Dan's death, our community has come together and we have formed a nonprofit 503c LLC called Go Live Co. Horrell Family Foundation. And this is in Livingston County, Michigan. Our mission statement is impeccable, and I would like to read it to you. Go Live Co. Horrell Family Foundation develops and advocates safe, active mobility solutions in Livingston County. We focus on streets, roads, and trails that will allow people to safely walk, run, bike, horseback ride, and enjoy non-motorized transportation regardless of age or ability. Life is having something to do, someone to love, and something to look forward to. This was taken from Dan and me, our family, friends, and community. The 5th Do It for Dan Memorial Ride will take place May 7th, and more information can be located on our website, www.golivco.org. This is my something to do now. You, my friends, family, and community are my someone to love. I want to thank you for your time today on the upcoming 4th anniversary of Dan's death. Your efforts in preventing distracted driving by passing these hands-free Michigan bills will help decrease the tragedy that I and others have endured. These bills are one of my something to look forward to. So thank you very much, and I hope you support the bills.
Thank you so much, Jane. I do have a question from Representative Fitzgerald.
Jane, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for sharing Dan's memory with us, something that I know I will carry forward with me while considering this legislation, and I'm sure every member of this body will as well. Thank you to the sponsors as well for taking up this important legislation. And not so much a question, but rather a comment. We have, I think, been provided many examples of high-speed incidents where this distracted driver incidents, environment take place. But clearly, in your experience and what caused Dan's life to be taken was a lower speed and an interesting scenario in a state park where, I mean, I've seen state parks that have speed limit signs that I think say 17 miles an hour. It's a very accurate number, but clearly trying to limit the speed. And so clearly the situations do not discriminate against where you may be, what speed the vehicle is being operated at, but rather it is about the habits of the driver. And so I want to thank you for putting yourself here today to speaking so candidly and vulnerably about the memory of Dan, and I hope that this helps to inform our decision-making as we move forward in this process. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks again. Okay, we do have a couple cards and a couple people who would like to speak to the bills. First, we'll take up James Freibler. James, have a seat.
Good morning. My name is James Freibler. My son Jacob was here. Is the only memory I have left is a picture. There's no more family pictures, no more family gatherings, nothing. June 18th of 2014, my son Jacob was on the other end of the spectrum. He was the distracted driver. He was the one who was texting and driving. He was on his way to help me on his way home, doing 60 miles an hour down a rural road. He crossed the center line, hit SUV head on. No skid marks, nothing. Everybody in this room has a cell phone. If you do not have a cell phone, I would be totally surprised. As we all have cell phones, we know what they are for. Everything. They are our new addiction. We are addicted to them like it's meth, alcohol, anything. If you misplace it, you are lost without it. On that day, Jacob was texting to two different people. One was a girl, friend, girl, and his girlfriend's mom on his way home. I was very sick at that time. I had major surgery. He was on his way home to help me crush my pills and help me with my IV. He never made it. I find out at 1 a.m. from a sheriff who comes to my door to tell me that my son is dead. I have an IV pole. I had 34 staples in my stomach. Sheriff said he thought I was going to drop dead right there. How fast does it, was he going? 60. How long does it take for them to realize that a text message is a killer? Well, if you have your cell phone on you, I want you to text 4 words twice into it. I'm not feeling well. I'm not feeling well. How long would that take you to text? A couple of seconds? Those are the last words on his cell phone. I have his cell phone at home. How do we remember this? Well, today we remember it by passing these bills. 4250, 4251, 4252 need to go through. I've been working on this since 2016. Every time something comes up, there is a new member to this club of losing a loved one. Is your family member next? I don't want to sit here and do this all the time. We need to act. We don't need to wait 180 days. We need this yesterday. Earlier, Representative Ottman, you brought up about GPS and things like that. I'm going to be 57. We used to use maps, big paper maps. You pull over and you look out to where to go. I used a GPS to get here today. Granted, I know this route by heart because I've been up in front of committees and coming down here way too much. But I still had my GPS on. Most of them have a little voice thing. You can set it right next to you and it'll say, turn right at 800 feet on Waverly Road. Turn, go a half a mile, turn at that light left. Those are how we get through stuff. There is so many electronics in our car. So many. Get the cell phones out of people's hand. Get this done. For me, for my family, for my colleague that I worked with, Allie Zimmerman's mom, Laurel, since 2016. For Steve Kiefer and his family. Who else do we need to sit here? New faces up front, same old faces sitting back here with death on us. Please pass these bills. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your testimony and telling us, everyone telling us your story of your family, your loved ones. I do have another card, and somebody would like to speak. Dr. Bride. I'm sorry, I'm not reading it right because I can't read the handwriting, but Dr. Bride would like to speak on the bill and opposes the bills.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. The Michigan Department of Civil Rights has some concerns about the bill as it is written. We would like to see it amended to include a training component, which is not there now. The bill does allude to officers not using these stops to search vehicles, to look at other activity that might be going on, but it doesn't provide for explicit training. And we think that that is a something that would strengthen this policy. As written, 4250 doesn't recognize racially disparate traffic stops as a behavior that needs to be modified in our state. The first step to that behavior modification of racially disparate behavior is recognizing one's behavior must be modified. Law enforcement agencies and officers must recognize that they must change their ways and internalize that. MDCR has experts in implicit bias and cultural competency to help with training, but training means nothing if you don't have the wherewithal and the willpower to address systemic, disparate treatment in traffic stops. As written, 4250 has no provisions for training police officers not to use suspicion of driving while using cell phones as a pretext for racial profiling in traffic stops. We have seen police departments in the state that have done wonderful audits and research that recognize that they were involved in disparate treatment of drivers based on their race. And we're working with some of them to help them correct that behavior so that it doesn't become just a continuing problem. So our opposition to 4250 as written is that it needs to have a training component for police officers in it. To just state in the bill that officers won't use this as a pretext for other types of investigation or stops is not sufficient. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be glad to respond to any questions.
Doesn't look like I have any questions right now, but thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
So I do have some cards to read in. People that would like to speak, do not wish to speak on the bills. In support of the bill, Sergeant Travis Fletcher from the Michigan State Police. In support of the bills, Craig Ryan from AAA. In support of the bill, Brian O'Connell from General Motors. In support of the bill, Paul Corbett from Mish Auto, sorry, my apologies. In support of the bills, Brian Show from the Detroit Regional Chamber. In support of the bills, John Lindemeyer from the League of Michigan Bicyclists. In support of the bill, Karen E. Johnston from Toyota Motors North America. And in support of the bill, Mike Spence from SEMCOG. And one final card to read in, Ed Hune, which is from the American Rapid Relay League, is neutral. Well, thank you everyone for coming today for your testimony. Appreciate that. Like I said before, that we will be taking these bills up in the very near future. There being no further business before the committee will stand adjourned.